Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're literally stepping inside the human mind to check out a truly foundational framework. I want you to think of what we're about to do as, well, examining the ultimate structural blueprint. We're unpacking a source text called The Architecture of Human Response, and we're going to treat it exactly like a physical, literal building. We're going to examine it from the ground up to see exactly how its pieces fit together to govern basically everything we do. Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly are emotions, attitude, and behavior? Now, this isn't just some abstract philosophical prompt, right? This is the exact foundational question presented right at the start of our source material, and it acts as the ultimate key to human psychology. Because if we really want to decode ourselves, if we want to figure out how we operate, how we react to stress, build relationships, or just respond to this unpredictable world around us, the text is telling us we absolutely have to start right here. Understanding these three specific variables, it's the fundamental prerequisite to understanding human nature itself. So to answer that question, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First up, we've got the human response architecture. Then we'll look at defining the fundamentals. And finally, we'll wrap up with the core correlation. Basically, we're going to deconstruct this overarching architecture into its building blocks and then synthesize them all back together. Let's move to and see how this builds into our first section, Part 1, the Human Response Architecture, a module overview. The framework for this module is incredibly focused, and it's really rooted in a highly logical approach. As we can see, it's broken down into two primary learning objectives. First, participants will learn the fundamentals of human response. This is all about isolating the basics. And why do we isolate them? Because complex systems, like the human mind, require a component-level understanding before you can even hope to grasp the whole thing. Second, participants will learn the correlation between these elements. You really can't understand the complete picture until you know the isolated parts. And you definitely can't understand the parts without seeing how they interact dynamically out there in the real world.
All right, moving right along to Part 2, defining the fundamentals, the three core pillars. Let's transition into our deconstruction phase and isolate these foundational elements.
Think of these three elements like the massive load-bearing columns of a building. And it starts right here with the very first foundational element, emotions. If we're constructing the architecture of human response, emotions are basically the raw materials. But what actually is an emotion in this context? Well, according to the frameworks aligned with our text, an emotion isn't just a vague, floaty feeling. It's a rapid, often totally uncontrollable physiological response. It's that neurological spark that happens the absolute millisecond you interact with the stimulus. Like when a car swerves into your lane, that immediate jolt you feel in your chest, that's the raw data of fear. It's temporary, it's visceral, and it's the absolute baseline. The text prioritizes this as the primary building block because, honestly, before your brain even has time to form a thought, your body has already generated an emotion. It's the foundation that everything else is built upon. Next up in the sequence is attitude, which forms the second critical building block in our structural framework. But how does an attitude actually differ from an emotion? Well, if an emotion is that raw, fleeting data, your attitude is the algorithm that processes it. An attitude is a much more enduring cognitive framing. It's your belief system, which is heavily shaped by your past experiences, your biases, and your values. Essentially, it acts as a filter. While an emotion might literally last for just a few seconds, an attitude can last a lifetime. For instance, say you experience the sudden emotion of frustration at work. Your attitude is what dictates whether you view that frustration as a temporary, solvable challenge or as, permanent proof that your job is terrible. It represents the next, highly complex layer of our architecture, taking those raw emotional sparks and giving them a lasting, structural context in your mind. Finally, we have behavior. This completes the deconstruction phase of our source material. If emotions and attitude make up the internal, invisible structure of our minds, behavior is the observable outcome. It's the exterior facade of our architectural metaphor, the physical manifestation of everything happening underneath. This is where those physiological sparks and cognitive filters finally translate into physical reality. Let's say you get a piece of really harsh constructive criticism. That initial neurological spark is the emotion of anxiety or maybe defensiveness. Your cognitive filter, your attitude, might process this as a direct attack on your competence. The behavior is simply what happens next. Do you cross your arms and scowl? Do you lash out verbally? Or do you take a deep breath and ask a clarifying question? By isolating behavior as the third fundamental, the text makes it super clear that our actions aren't just random. They are the final inevitable pillar in this carefully sequenced trio.
And that brings us to part 3, the core correlation, putting the pieces together. Now we're shifting gears from defining isolated fundamentals to exploring their incredibly complex relationships.
So, the crucial point is that the text makes its objective crystal clear. To quote directly, participants would learn the correlation between emotions, attitude, and behavior. You see, just memorizing the definitions of those 3 load-bearing pillars, that isn't the final goal here. The true objective of this entire module is mastering the unseen forces, that dynamic, active correlation that actually binds these 3 elements together in real time. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visually represents this correlation, showing the theoretical pathway linking these 3 fundamentals. Step 1, emotions. Step 2, attitude. Step 3, behavior. The text promises that we must learn the correlation between them, which implies a sort of internal domino effect. Let's walk through a real-world example of this exact chain. Imagine you're giving a public presentation and you make a minor mistake. Step 1, emotion. You instantly feel a flush of embarrassment, a biological, totally uncontrollable response. Boom, the first domino falls. Step 2, attitude. Because you might have a deeply ingrained perfectionist belief system, your attitude frames that embarrassment as a complete, catastrophic failure. There goes the second domino. Step 3, behavior. Driven by that negative attitude, your behavior completely changes. You start rushing through your slides, avoiding eye contact, maybe mumbling your words. The third domino falls. Understanding how one step inevitably influences and triggers the next, that is the true key to grasping the module's core lesson. It's a chain reaction. To summarize the underlying thesis here, it really all comes down to a powerful equation. Grasping the fundamentals plus understanding their correlation equals the complete architecture. But why does this equation actually matter to you? Well, identifying the parts without understanding how they trigger each other kind of leaves you powerless. Once you understand this chain, you gain the ability to intervene. You can't always stop that initial emotion, sure, but if you recognize your attitude acting as a negative filter, you can insert a wedge right there. You can actually short-circuit negative actions and consciously choose a better response. Mastering both sides of this equation is what ultimately allows you to rebuild the structural framework of your own reactions. Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought to ponder. Once you master the correlation between your emotions, attitude, and behavior, what will you build with it? The text lays out the structural blueprint. If you can truly understand the architecture of your own responses and recognize the chain reaction occurring within you every single day, the possibilities for the life and habits you can construct are entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope diving deep into the psychology behind these concepts really helps solidify them for you. Keep learning, keep building, and I'll catch you next time.